Jubal Hark had been in Longbow 3 hours and was ready to leave. He was not a man who cared for towns. He had been raised in one well enough and had spent the first 18 years of his life learning the particular machinery of a small place. Who owed what to whom, which names opened a door, and which ones shut it. But that had been before his father died and left him the half-moon. And in the 4 years since, he had come to prefer the company of cattle and fence lines and his own quiet. He had what he had come for: flour, salt pork, 2 boxes of shells, a new axe handle, 4 blankets rated for hard winter, and a sack of coffee that would last him to March if he was careful with it. Longbow had what he needed, and not one other thing he wanted. The town felt tighter than usual that day. People were moving with the specific quality of folks who know something is happening and are either in it or making a point of not being in it. He loaded the wagon. He checked the harness. He climbed up on the box. He was reaching for the lines when he heard it. A sound out of the covered section behind him. Canvas shifting. Somebody moving their weight against the sideboard. He got down. He walked to the back of the wagon. He pulled the flap. A young woman was sitting between the flour sacks and the blankets, with her knees drawn up and a small carpet bag held in both hands and an expression on her face that was trying to be composed and was not managing it all the way. She was 24 or near it. Dark hair coming loose from its pins. Brown eyes doing the particular arithmetic of somebody who has just been caught and is working out in real time whether the person who caught her is a danger or a chance. Her dress was a pale rose color and plain, and there was a stain at the hem that was still damp. She had been running not long ago. He looked at her. She looked at him. Out in the street somewhere behind him, he could hear horses moving at the pace of men who are searching for a thing. She leaned forward a little. "Pretend I am your wife," she whispered. "Until we are out of town." Jubal Hark looked at this woman he had never seen in his life, sitting in his wagon between his flour and his blankets. With the sound of horses coming down the street and a bag in her hands, and the specific settled desperation of a person who has run out of choices and has landed on a stranger's wagon as the last one left. He did not know her name. He did not know what she was running from. He knew what horses sound like when men are looking for something. And he knew what it means when a person is hiding. "Get down," he said. "Lie flat. Pull the blanket over." She did it without a word. He closed the canvas. He walked back to the front. He picked up the lines. There were 3 of them. They came from the north end of the street at the pace of men being thorough rather than urgent, looking into wagons, looking into doorways, the systematic search of people who have done it before and are not concerned about how it comes out, because they have the kind of employer whose name makes an outcome manageable. Jubal knew who they rode for before they got to him. Everybody in that country knew Merrick Vane's men. Not remarkable one at a time. Taken together, they had the quality of men who understand that their authority comes entirely out of somebody else's money, and who have made their peace with that because the money is enough. The lead rider pulled up alongside the wagon. "Morning," the man said. "Morning, you come in off the North Road." "Half Moon Creek," Jubal said. 16 miles. The rider looked at the wagon, at the load showing through the front, at Jubal. "You see a young woman on your way in. Dark hair. Rose-colored dress." Jubal thought about what he had seen. He thought about it for the half-second he had, and made the only decision that felt honest inside that half-second, which was that he did not yet know why she was hiding, and therefore did not yet know whether helping these men was the right thing or the wrong one, and until he knew that, the burden of it sat on them and not on him. "My wife is in the back," he said. "She is not well." The road turns her stomach. The rider looked at the canvas. Jubal did not look at the canvas. He looked at the rider with the steady expression of a man who has answered a question honestly and is waiting on the next one. From behind the flap came a small shift, and then quiet, and then the canvas pulled aside and Cordelia Nash looked out at the riders with the composed expression of somebody who has just heard what was wanted of her and has decided to supply it. Her hair was a little more disordered than it had been. There was color high in her cheeks that had not been there 60 seconds before, which he understood later she had got by pinching them. She looked at the riders with the mild impatience of a woman who is unwell and is being kept. "Jubal," she said. "Are we going?" She put a specific weight on the name. Not performing familiarity, just using it the way you use a name you have used 1,000 times. "In a minute," he said. He looked at the rider. "Is there something else?" The rider looked at her. He looked at Jubal. He looked at her again. Then his eyes went down to her feet. She was wearing shoes that had no business in a supply wagon, cream-colored with small buttons up the side, the kind of shoes that belong at a ceremony. Something changed in the rider's face. "Those are fine shoes for a sick woman," he said. Jubal had the wagon moving before the man finished the sentence. He did not do anything dramatic about it. He said, "She dressed before she felt it coming on," with the flat conviction of a man who is not arguing, and he flicked the lines, and the horse moved because a horse moves when you tell it to, and the wagon was rolling before the rider had settled on what he intended to do about the answer. They let him go about 30 seconds. Then he heard them behind him, not chasing, following, which is a different thing and in some ways a worse one, because chasing has urgency in it and following has patience, and patience is the harder of the two to get out from under. He turned at the feed store corner without signaling and took the alley behind the mercantile and came out on the old mill road that runs alongside the main street and that nobody in that country used in October because the ruts were deep and the footing was a question. The wagon took it. He came out on the east fork of the mountain road and pushed the horse to a pace that was not comfortable but that could be held, and after 20 minutes he could not hear anything behind him. He did not stop. She came forward from the back and sat beside him on the box without asking whether she could. Her cream shoes were already ruined. She held the carpet bag in her lap and looked at the road ahead with the expression of a person who has passed the crisis and has begun on the management of what comes after it. "They will take the main road," she said. "I know it," he said. "That is why we are on this one." "Where does this one go?" "My place," he said. "Eventually, by a longer way round through the North Basin." She was quiet a while. The Montana October was holding on hard. The aspen were all gone to gold, and the sky had that thin, sharp blue in it that tells you the winter is finished waiting. "I should explain," she said. "You should." She looked at her hands. "My name is Cordelia Nash. My mother was a laundress in Longbow. She died in March. Jubal drove. The wedding was today," she said. "This afternoon. At the Vane place." He was quiet a moment. "How long were you planning on staying in my wagon?" "Until Longbow was behind me. And after that." She looked at the mountains ahead of them. "I did not have an after that yet," she said. He drove. She sat. The wagon went on through the Montana afternoon, and neither one of them said anything for a while, which was not uncomfortable, and which surprised the both of them. She told him the rest of it during the first hour on the mountain road. Not all at once. In the way things come out when you are moving through country that has no audience in it, and the person beside you is not filling up the quiet with questions. She had answered Merrick Vane's letter in June. That was the part she went back over 3 times. And he understood after the second time that she was not telling it to him so much as she was telling it to herself in a form she could live in. Her mother had been dying since February. There was a room over the laundry that came with the work and would not come with anything else. She was 24 years old, and there was nothing in Longbow for a woman of 24 with no money and no people, and she had known that in June the same way she knew it in October. Merrick Vane had written to her twice. He was 51. He had 11,000 acres north of town, and he wanted a wife, and he said so plainly and without any decoration on it, and he sent $200 for the passage and the clothes and whatever her mother needed at the end. She had said yes. "I want that said flat," she said. Nobody made me. Nobody deceived me. I read the letter, and I counted what I had, and I wrote back yes, and I would write it again if you set me down in June with the same arithmetic. Jubal drove. Her mother had died in March. The wedding had been set for October because Vane was 3 months at the Chicago yards and would not be back before it. She had met him for the first time at 9 o'clock that morning. "What happened?" Jubal said. "Nothing happened," she said. "He waited. That is the whole trouble," she said. "Nothing happened. He was civil to me. He was not unkind. He showed me the house, and it is a fine house, and he told me what the arrangement would be, and it was not an unreasonable arrangement, and there is not one thing that man said to me this morning that I could carry into a court or a church or even a kitchen and put in front of another woman, and have her say, 'Yes, you were right to run.' Then what?" She looked at her hands. "His housekeeper," she said. "A woman named Cyrilda who has been in that house 19 years. She helped me with the buttons, and she did not look at me the whole time she was doing it. And when she was done, she said one thing and went out of the room." "What did she say?" Cordelia Nash was quiet for a moment. She said, "He had a wife before." She said, "She died in the lambing shed in January of '86. She said, she was 2 days in labor, and the shed is 1,100 yards from the house, and the doctor at Longbow is 19 miles, and Mr. Vane worked the figure of it and decided against sending. And then she said, he was not cruel about it. He was never cruel about it. He simply counted, and she came out on the wrong side of the count, and he has never once in 5 years said her name where I could hear it. The wagon went on up the road. That is not a crime, Jubal said. No, Cordelia said. That is what makes it hard. She looked out at the country going by. If he had struck me, I could have gone to the sheriff. If he had lied about the money, I could have gone to a lawyer. He did neither of those things. He is going to be entirely in the right about this for the rest of his life, and so is everybody in that county, and I know it, and I went out the side door of that church anyway, with the buttons still done up. Jubal Hark drove about a quarter mile without saying anything at all. Then he said, "The $200. She turned her head. "I have it," she said. He looked at her. "All of it," she said. "I did not spend a cent of it on myself. What went to my mother's burying I made up out of the laundry through the summer, and I have the accounting of that written down. The 200 is sewn into the hem of this dress, and it has been there since Tuesday night." "Since Tuesday," Jubal said. "Since Tuesday," she said. He drove. "So you had decided," he said. "I had decided that I might decide," she said. "There is a difference, and I have been sitting with it since Tuesday, and I do not much like what it says about me." She looked straight ahead. "But I sewed it in on Tuesday, and I ran on Saturday, and a person who sews money into a hem on Tuesday is not a person who was surprised on Saturday." The road climbed. The light was going long and cold across the basin below them. "I am not going to keep his money," she said. "I want that understood by you before we go any further. Because I do not know you, and you do not know me, and I would rather you had it now than found it out later. I am going to put those $200 back in that man's hand, and I am going to do it where people can see me do it. Because the only thing I have got in this world is that nobody can say I took anything." Jubal Hark looked at the road ahead of him. "All right," he said. The storm came that evening the way storms come in that country, without the warning that would have been of any use, and with the specific authority of weather that has made up its mind. Jubal saw it building in the north, and pushed the horse harder, and did not make the ranch. He made an old line cabin he had used for summer grazing since he was 19. One room, a stone fireplace, a lean-to on the north side, and wood stacked outside because he stacked wood outside every October whether he expected to be there or not. Which is the particular foresight of a man who has understood for a long time that the mountains take no interest in his plans. They got the horse into the lean-to. They got the wagon alongside. They got in. Cordelia Nash had not complained once on that road. Not about the pace or the cold or the ruined shoes or the fact that she had eaten nothing since the night before. She sat on the one chair while he built up the fire and looked around that room with the expression of somebody taking inventory and finding it manageable. "There is food in the wagon," he said. "I will get it." "I will get it," she said. "You have the fire." She went out into it and came back with the salt pork and a portion of the flour and the coffee and 2 of the blankets. And she had the pork cut and in the pan before he had the fire going properly, which he noticed and did not remark on. They ate. The storm came down hard outside. He had expected something. Questions, maybe, or the aftermath of a morning that had taken a considerable amount of composure to get through. What he got was a woman who ate her supper and cleaned the pan with the practical efficiency of a person who has been looking after herself a long while, and who then sat looking at the fire and said, "Thank you for not asking me things on the road. You were telling me," he said, "on your own clock." She looked at the fire. "My mother used to say that the right person asks the right question at the right time," she said, "and the wrong person asks all of them at once." He looked at the fire, too. What was the right question? "She never told me," Cordelia said. "I think she meant that a person knows it when they hear it." He thought about that. He thought about a house built for more than one man that had one man in it for 4 years, and about a person who had stopped asking questions because there had been nobody in the house to ask. "Did you eat this morning?" he said. She looked at him. "No," she said. "That was the right question 6 hours ago," he said, "and I did not ask it." She almost smiled. It was the first time. It started and did not quite finish, and then it finished, and it changed her whole face, and Jubal Hark looked at the fire. Because looking straight at her when she smiled that way was a thing he was going to have to work up to. They came to the half moon a little after noon the next day. Cordelia Nash did not say anything when she first saw it. She got down and stood in the yard and looked at the house. It was solid and square and better built than it needed to be for one man, with a porch running the length of the front and a stone chimney and windows that had been washed inside the month. There was a kitchen garden on the south side that had been put to bed for the winter with the particular care of a person who intends it to come up again. He had banked the beds with straw and old manure, the kind of work that means nothing to look at in October, and means carrots and potatoes coming through a deep freeze and up first in April before anything else in that basin. She looked at the garden a long time. "You do this yourself," she said. "My father laid it out," he said. "I keep it." She looked at the house. She looked at him. "I am sorry about your father." 4 years, he said. It was not an answer to what she had said, but it was an answer to something, and she took it that way and did not ask him to say more. He showed her the house. It was clean and ordered in the way of a man who has worked out that disorder costs time, and that time is not a thing you spend loosely on a working outfit. It was also missing the particular quality of a place that has had more than one person living in it for a while. The adjustments that happen when somebody else's preferences have got into the arrangement. She saw that inside of a minute. She did not say a word about it. He showed her where she could sleep. It was the room his father had used and that had stood empty 4 years, and that he had kept the way he kept everything, clean and functional and exactly as it was. She put the carpet bag on the chair by the window. "I will pay for my keep," she said. "You do not need to." "I will," she said. "I am not a guest. I am somebody who needs to stay until the pass opens, and while I am here I will earn it." He looked at her. "This place runs with one," he said. "I know it," she said. "It would run better with two." He held her eyes a moment. She held his. He looked out the window at the snow starting. "There is a mare in the east stall," he said. "She came up lame in the near for last week. I have been managing it. A second pair of hands would help." "I will look at her in the morning," she said. He nodded and went to start supper. She unpacked the bag. It held a change of clothes, a wooden comb, a small sewing kit, her mother's Bible, and a hand lantern. It was a small thing, brass, about the size of a coffee tin, with a wire bail and a hinged glass and a screw for the wick. It had been good work once. It was not any more. The brass had gone dark everywhere except along the bail where a hand had been on it for years, and one of the panes had a crack across the corner that had been sealed with something and sealed again. She set it on the sill of the window and did not put it away. Jubal saw it that evening when he came through to say the supper was on, and he looked at it a moment on the sill and did not ask about it and went back to the kitchen. The pass closed on the 2nd of November. Cordelia Nash was at the Half Moon for the winter. It was not a romantic situation in the sense of being an easy one. It was two people in a house through a Montana winter, which is its own kind of examination. The work did not stop. The cattle wanted feeding, and the water wanted breaking, and the wood wanted splitting, and the harness wanted mending. And there were days when neither of them said one word beyond what the work required, and days when the talk ran through supper and out the other side of it into the evening. She was good with the mare. That surprised him in the way a thing surprises you when you have made an assumption without noticing that you made one. She went at the lame leg with the focused patience of a person who understands animals, not the careful approach of somebody unfamiliar, but the direct, confident approach of somebody who grew up around them. "Your mother kept horses," he said. "My grandfather," she said. "I had summers with him until I was 12. The mare was sound by the middle of December. Cordelia also, quietly and without any announcement about it, repaired things. The kitchen curtains, which had been torn at the hem since before he had noticed they were torn. A section of the porch rail that had been loose since spring. A split in the breeching that he had been meaning to get at since September and had gone on not getting at. She did not tell him when she had done these things. He found them done. He started leaving notes, not letters. Practical notes, the kind that work as conversation between two people whose hours do not always line up. Wood on the north side wants another cord before February. Mare is holding. Do not let her out on the ice. Salt pork left if you want it for supper. Do not wait on me, I will be at the far fence past dark. She answered them the same way. Curtains in your father's room wanted it too. I have started them. Loose stone in the east wall of the barn. I mortared it. Use the kit off the shelf. 8. There is more. She was right that the place ran better with two. Not because she worked harder than he did, and not because she changed the way he did anything. It was that having another person in it changed the quality of the work itself and gave it a different weight, which was the weight of a thing being built rather than a thing being held even. He sat with that one evening in December and thought it through honestly, which was not a thing he did often about himself. He thought about a house that had been built for more than one man and had held one man 4 years. He thought a good while about his father, who had laid the garden out in '83 at a size that made no sense for 2 men and had never once explained why. He thought about notes on a kitchen table. He put his coffee down and went out to look at the cattle, and he thought about it the rest of the winter. She told him about the lantern in the second week of December. It had sat on the sill of that window since the first evening, and he had gone past it something like 400 times and had not once asked, and she told him afterward that the not asking was the reason she told him at all. It was a Thursday, and the wind was up, and they were at the table with the lamp between them and the work of the day finished. "My mother took in laundry," Cordelia said, "but that was only the last 6 years. Before that she was at the woolen mill at Bannock Road. 11 years. Jubal waited. "The mill let out at 7 in the winter," she said, "and we were 4 miles out on the county road, and there was no living in town on mill wages with a child. So she walked it. 4 miles in and 4 miles home, 6 days, 11 years. She turned the cup in her hands. "That is not a story," she said. "Every second woman in this territory has a version of it. I am only telling you so you understand about the lantern." "All right." She bought it in '79 off a peddler for $1.40, which was 2 days, and she carried it on that road for 11 years. She cleaned the glass every Sunday. She trimmed the wick every Sunday. My whole childhood, Sunday afternoon was my mother at the kitchen table with that lantern in pieces in front of her and a rag and a tin of lamp black, and I was not allowed to touch it, and I was allowed to watch. She looked at the window where it was sitting. She would not walk that road dark, she said. Not one step of it. There were nights she got to the mill gate and found the oil low, and she would go back into town and spend money we did not have rather than start out on that road without it lit. My father was gone by then, and there was nobody to argue with her about it, and I do not believe there was an argument that would have worked. "Why?" Jubal said. Cordelia Nash was quiet a moment. "Because a person walking a dark road is invisible," she said. "That is the whole of it." She said it to me exactly twice in my life, and both times in the same words. "If they cannot see you, you are not there. And if you are not there, then whatever happens to you did not happen to anybody." The stove ticked. "She died on that road," Cordelia said. Jubal Hark did not say anything. "Not in the winter," she said. "In August of '89 of her heart, about 1.5 miles short of the house. And she was 53 years old, and she went down in the ditch grass on the east side, and she was there about 2 hours before the Petrie boy came along." She looked at her hands. "The lantern was lit," she said. "It was lit, and it was standing up in the grass beside her where she had set it down, and that is how he saw her. Because it was gone 11 at night, and he would have gone by her in the dark and never known she was there." She looked up. "That is the whole of it," she said. "She was right about the road. She was right for 11 years, and she was right the last night, too. And the only thing that ever went wrong with her arithmetic was her heart, which is not a thing a lantern can do anything about." Jubal Hark looked at the window a long while. Then he said, "You have carried that from Longbow." "I have carried that from the ditch on the Bannock Road," she said. Merrick Vane came on the 11th of December. He came early. That was the first thing about it that Jubal understood afterward as being deliberate. Because a man who intends to be reasonable comes in April, when the pass is open, and a man who intends to be understood comes in December, when it is not. And Vane had come around by the low country with 6 riders and had spent 2 days doing it. Jubal was at the barn when he heard them. He came out into the yard. He did not go for anything, because going for a thing first is not how you handle a situation you have not read yet. Merrick Vane was 51 and had the look of a man whose physical presence had once counted for something, and whose authority had long since got large enough that the presence was not needed anymore. "Hark," he said. "Vane, I believe you have got something of mine." The house door opened. Cordelia came out onto the porch. She stood there in her work dress with her sleeves pushed up and looked at Merrick Vane with the expression of a person who has been afraid of a thing a long time and has, over the course of a Montana November spent mending a porch rail and getting a mare sound, come to the far end of the fear. Vane looked at her. "Cordelia," he said, "come down." She did not move yet. "She has been here since October," Jubal said. "Of her own choosing, in my father's room, and there is not a person in this basin who is going to hear different from me." "I did not ask about that," Vane said. And that was the thing about him. Jubal had come out into that yard, braced for a man who would say something ugly. Because an ugly thing is easy to stand against. What he got instead was a man who said, "I did not ask about that," and meant it, and went on. "Miss Nash," Vane said, and his voice was not raised at all. "I paid $200 in June against a written agreement in your own hand. I did not misrepresent one term of it. I did not lay a hand on you, and I did not raise my voice to you, and I have not said one word about you in Longbow that I would not say in front of your mother if she were living." Cordelia stood on the porch. "That is true," she said. "I have not gone to the sheriff," Vane said, "because there is nothing for a sheriff in it, and I have not gone to a lawyer, because I do not care to be a man who does that." He looked at her steadily. "I have come to ask you in front of witnesses what it is you say happened, because I have been asked it 40 times in 6 weeks and I have not had an answer to give." One of his riders shifted his horse. Cordelia Nash came down the steps. She came down them without hurrying and crossed the yard and stopped about 8 feet from his horse, and Jubal Hark moved once, 1 step, and she said, without turning her head, "No." He stopped. She reached down and took the hem of her work dress in both hands and found the place, and pulled, and the stitching gave with the particular sound old thread makes. And she worked her fingers in and drew out a flat packet of notes folded in oilcloth that had been sewn into a dress on a Tuesday night in October and moved from that dress into this one in November and had not been opened in either. She held it up. $200, she said. "Every note of it. It has not been out of my keeping, and it has not been spent, and it has not been counted by anybody but me." She held it out. Vane did not take it. There were 11 men in that yard by then. Because the Beaker brothers had come up from the north fence when they saw riders, and Ollie Trumbo had come over the creek, and none of them had been asked, and none of them had stayed back. "Take it," Cordelia said. "That is not what I came for," Vane said. "I know what you came for," she said. "You came for an answer, and I do not have one that will do you any good, because nothing happened." She did not raise her voice either. "That is the answer. You were civil to me, and you showed me the house, and you set out the arrangement, and you did not deceive me in any particular. And I went out the side door anyway, and I have not got one thing to hand a judge or a preacher or you." "Then why?" "Because I asked a question," she said, "and I got an answer." Merrick Vane went very still on that horse. Cordelia Nash did not say the name Cyrilda, and she did not say the name of the woman who had died in the lambing shed in January of '86. And she did not say them, because she had worked out somewhere in November that saying them would put a 19-year housekeeper out on a road in the winter, and there was not any version of being right that was worth that. So she said, "You know what I asked, and you know who answered it. And I am not going to say it in this yard. And you can take that as the only generosity I have got left for you." The yard was very quiet. "Take the money, Mr. Vane," she said. "Take it in front of these men and go home, and there is not one person in this county who will ever be able to say I took anything from you, and that is the whole of what I want out of this, and it is the whole of what I am ever going to want." Merrick Vane looked at her a long moment. Then he leaned down and took the packet out of her hand. He put it in his coat without counting it, which Jubal thought about a good deal afterward, and turned his horse. Then he stopped and looked back. He is 38 years old and he has been alone on this place 4 years, Vane said. You are 24. In February, you are going to be in a house you cannot get out of with a man you have known 5 weeks and no road down, and you are going to find out what he is, and there will not be a side door. He said it evenly. There was nothing in it you could call a threat. I hope you are right about him, he said. I am not being clever. I hope you are right. And he rode. His men went after him, not all at once, but the way men go when they have chosen a direction and found it was not the one they had been pointed at. It worked. That was the part she did not tell him about until February. It worked the way that kind of thing is built to work, which is slowly and from the inside, and she went into January knowing exactly what had been done to her and unable to stop it happening. She watched him. She did not want to, and she did it anyway. She watched him with the mare when the leg swelled again in the first week of the month, and she watched him with the Trumbo boy who came over for the loan of a bit and stayed 2 hours, and she watched him at the table on the 17th when she burned a pan of biscuits past saving and stood there with the pan in her hand waiting to find out what he was. He said, "There is bread from Tuesday," and got it out of the box and ate 2 of the burnt ones anyway, because he said he liked them dark, and this was a lie, and they both knew it was a lie, and he did not appear to feel any way about being caught in it. She went to her room that night and sat on the edge of the bed and was angrier than she had been in the church. Nate Trumbo started coming over in January. He was 14 and he came over for reasons that were never quite the reason. A bit that wanted borrowing, word about the Beaker fence, a question about a horse that his father could have answered in his sleep. Cordelia worked out inside of 2 visits that the boy was coming because Jubal Hark talked to him like a man who had asked a real question, and that there were 4 grown men at the Trumbo place and not one of them did. She watched that too, in the 6 weeks of the watching, and she was fair enough with herself to write down what she saw. He never once shortened an answer for the boy's age. He did not make the boy feel the length of the answer either, which is the harder half of it. When the boy was wrong about a thing, he said so in about 11 words and went on, and when the boy was right about a thing, he said so in about 4, and Cordelia noticed that the 4-word ones landed harder, and that Nate Trumbo went home walking differently on the days he got one. On a Thursday at the end of January, the boy asked him, in the barn, with Cordelia at the door and neither of them aware of her, whether it was true that he had gone out on the flat in '85 after the Hobart girl. "It is true," Jubal said. "Did you find her?" "I did." "Was she?" "She was," Jubal said. She had been out one night, and it was not a hard one, and she was 11, and she had done the right thing, which was to stop moving. Nate Trumbo said, "What is the right thing if it is a hard one?" Jubal Hark put down what he was holding. "Get out of the wind," he said. "Anything, a cut bank, a deadfall, a horse. Put the horse down and get in behind it if it comes to that, and do not think twice about the horse. And then stop, and stay stopped, because a man walking in that is a man going in a circle. And a circle out there is 4 miles wide, and you will not know you are in one." The boy took that in. "And then what?" "Then somebody comes," Jubal said. "What if they do not?" "Then you were still right to stop," Jubal said, "because everything else was worse." Cordelia Nash went back into the house and did not say anything about it, and she wrote nothing down about that one. And 11 days later, a 14-year-old boy on the downwind side of the flat put his horse down against a cut bank and got in behind it and stayed there. The notes went on all winter. She kept them. That was a thing nobody found out until 1927, when the drawer in the kitchen table was gone through, and there were about 400 of them in it, on the backs of feed bills and flour wrappers, and one on the end paper torn out of a seed catalog, and the great part of them said nothing at all. Wood on the north side. Mare is holding. There is bread. Do not wait on me. 8. There is more. Wind coming. I have put the hens in. Your hand. I saw it. There is salve on the shelf, and I will not mention it again. That last one was in her hand and was from the middle of January, and there was one under it in his from the same day that said only, used it. She told him on the 3rd of February. She told him because she could not carry it any further, and because a thing like that goes bad if it is kept, and she told it plainly with her hands flat on the table, which was how she told everything. He said a thing to me in the yard in December, she said. About February. About what I would find out. I heard him, Jubal said. I know you did. She looked at the table. I have been watching you since. Every day since. Not once or twice. Every day, on purpose, waiting on the thing he told me was coming. Jubal Hark turned his cup a quarter turn. Did you find it? He said. No, he nodded. That is not the part I have to tell you, she said. The part I have to tell you is that I have been ashamed of the watching for 6 weeks and I went on doing it anyway, and I would like to know what you make of a woman who does that. He was quiet a while. I make that he was a careful man, Jubal said at last, and that he did not have anything to work with, so he used the only thing there was, which was that you have got no way of knowing about me and no road out until April. He looked at her. I would have watched me too, he said. If it had been the other way about, and a man had said that to me about you in a yard with 11 people standing in it, I would have watched you every day since, and I would not have told you about it in February, and I might not have told you at all. Cordelia Nash looked at him across that table. The wind came around the corner of the house. Then he said, he was not wrong about one thing. Which? There is no road down, Jubal said. Not until April. And that is a true thing, and it is going to go on being true whatever either of us says at this table tonight, so I am going to say the only thing I have got that is worth anything against it. And then I am going to let it alone. All right. You have got my father's room, and it has a bolt on the inside of that door that I put on in November, the 2nd week, before I had any business thinking about it, he said. You have not used it, and I have not mentioned it, and I would rather you knew it was there than found it. She sat with that a moment. I found it, she said. In November. He nodded. I have not used it, she said. I know, he said. The bolt sticks. I would have heard it. The storm came in on the 9th of February. It was not the worst storm of that winter by the count they kept afterward. It was the worst kind. It came in the middle of the afternoon out of the northwest, with no drop in the light ahead of it, and it did not bring a great deal of new snow. What it brought was wind, and what the wind did was pick up everything that had fallen since Christmas and put it in the air, and by 4 o'clock a man standing in that yard could not see the barn from the porch. That is the thing about a ground blizzard that people who have not stood in one do not understand. It is not dark. It is white, all the way around, in every direction, without a single thing in it that has an edge, and a man in it loses the sky and the ground in the same minute and his own feet not long after. Ollie Trumbo's boy Nate was 14 years old, and he was between the two places when it came. He had been sent over that morning with a bull calf on a lead-in word about the Beaker fence. And he had been at the Half Moon until 2, and Jubal had told him twice to stay, and the boy had looked at the sky and said his father would want him back, and had gone at 2:15, and the Trumbo place was 3.5 miles down the creek on a track a boy had ridden 200 times. At 4:45, Ollie Trumbo's older boy came up out of the white at the yard gate on a horse that was blown, and he did not get down, and what he said was, "Is he here?" Jubal Hark stood in that yard about 4 seconds. Then he went into the barn. Cordelia was behind him before he had the second horse's bridle in his hand. "Do not," she said. He kept working. "Jubal," he said, "he is 14 and he is on my track, and he went out of my yard after I told him to stay. And I did not tell him hard enough, and there is not one part of that I am going to be able to carry." "The creek track," she said. "He will not be on the creek track. He will have gone off it inside a mile, because there is nothing out there to hold a line by, and he will have gone downwind, because everything alive goes downwind. And downwind off that track is the flat, and the flat is 4 miles of nothing in any direction." He got the saddle on. Then he stopped, with his hands still on the cinch, and stood there. She saw it happen. She said afterward that she watched a man work out the second half of a thing he had already decided the first half of, and that she knew what he had got to before he turned around. "I can find him," he said. "I have got a fair idea of the ground, and I can quarter the flat, and I have done it before in '85. She waited. "I cannot find this house," he said. The barn was very quiet under the noise of it. "Not coming back," he said. "Not off the flat, in the dark, with a boy up in front of me and a horse that is done. There is no fence line out there, and there is no timber, and the creek is drifted level with the bank, and I could ride within 60 yards of this yard and go by it, and never know. And then it would be 2 of us out there instead of 1. Cordelia Nash said, "Then I will hold the point." He looked at her. "You know what I am saying to you," he said. "I know exactly what you are saying to me. 4 hours, maybe 5. In this. I know it. You cannot do it from the window," he said. "Glass is no good. You have got frost on the inside and frost on the outside, and it will not throw 8 feet, and I need it out in the open, and I need it high, and I need it in the same place every minute of the time I am gone. Because if it moves 20 feet, I will run a line to where it was and go past it. Then it will not move," she said. She went and got the lantern off the sill. Jubal Hark got a coil of line off the wall and came out onto that porch with her and did the one thing that was left to him, which was that he took 40 feet of lariat and put it around her waist and around the corner post of that porch, and made it fast with a knot she watched him tie and did not look away from. "Do not untie that," he said, "for anything. Not to go in and not to warm up, and not if you think you hear something. If you have got to be in the house, you go in on the rope, and you come out on the rope, and the lantern goes with you, and it comes back to the same 6 inches of rail." "The same 6 inches," she said. He looked at her. "The bale is going to go through your glove inside of an hour," he said. "I know. There is a bar there. You put your arm over the top rail and you hold it up above the rail line, because at 40 feet in this, a light at waist height is a light on the ground, and a light on the ground is nothing." "Above the rail," she said. He looked at her one more second. Then he said, "Cordelia, go," she said. He went. She lit it in the lee of the door and got the glass down and hung the bale over her forearm and went out to the corner post at the west end of the porch and put her arm over the top rail and held the lantern up above it into the wind. And the wind took her breath out sideways the first minute, and she got her chin down into her collar and settled her feet and did not move them again. At 6 o'clock it was full dark, and the white had gone gray, and the wind had not dropped at all. At 7 she could not feel the fingers of her right hand, and she changed arms, which took her about 90 seconds, and which she did without letting the lantern go below the rail, and she went on. At 8 the glass frosted from the inside, and she opened it and let the wind at the flame and nearly lost it, and she put her back to the wind and got the flame settled and got the glass down, and understood that she was going to have to do it again in an hour, and that each time she did it, she was going to nearly lose it. At 8:30 she went in on the rope, hand over hand along it with the lantern held out to the side, and she filled it from the can, and she came back out on the rope and got it up over the rail, and it was out of the same 6 inches for 4 minutes and 11 seconds, and she counted them. At 9 she began to talk to her mother, which she had not done since '89, and she was not particularly aware of doing it. She said the road at Bannock and the mill gate and the Sunday afternoons with the pieces on the table and the tin of lamp black. She said, I have got the wick trimmed, and the glass is cracked at the corner and it is still holding, and you were right about the arithmetic and you were right about the road, and about 10 o'clock, she said, out loud. Into a wind that took it away from her before it was finished, I am here. I am here. If they cannot see you, you are not there. Her arm came down twice in the 4th hour. Both times she got it back up. Jubal Hark quartered the flat for 2 hours and 20 minutes and found Nate Trumbo at 8 minutes past 7. In a cut bank on the downwind side of the flat where the boy had put his horse down against the bank and got in behind it, which was the only right thing available to him and which he had done at 14 years old without anybody to tell him. The horse was dead. The boy was not. He got him up in front of him and started back on the line he had come out on and held it for about a mile and a half, and then he lost it, the way a man loses it, which is that there is no moment at which he loses it and he simply arrives at a place where he understands that he does not know. He worked it another 40 minutes on what he had, which was the wind on his right cheek and a slope he could feel through the horse, and at some point he came off the slope onto flat ground that he did not know, and the wind came around behind him, and he understood that he had run out of the things he was using. He said afterward that he stopped there for about a minute and did the arithmetic. He was 200 and some yards off the west end of his own yard, going away from it at an angle of about 30 degrees. He turned the horse to put the wind on his cheek again, because it was all he had left, and he went about 80 yards on that. And then, out of the white on his left hand, at a distance he later paced at 81 steps, and that he had ridden across the front of without seeing, there was a light. It was not much of one. That is the part he told people afterward, and that nobody ever quite believed. It was not a beam, and it was not a glow, and it did not show him the house, or the yard, or the porch, or anything else. It was a small hard point of yellow about the size of a pea, in the middle of nothing, that went out when the wind gusted and came back when it dropped. It was steady in the only way that counted, which was that it was in the same place every time it came back. He said afterward, on more than one occasion and to more than one person, that if it had moved 20 feet in either direction he would have taken it for a lamp in the Beaker place and turned north on it and gone into the flat, and that would have been the end of the two of them. She did not see him come. She had her chin down in her collar and her arm up over the rail, and she was in the part of it where a person is not thinking in sentences anymore. And the first she knew of it was the horse's shoulder coming out of the white about 6 feet from her and Jubal Hark saying her name from up on it. She got the lantern down onto the rail and stood there. Then she said, "Is he?" "He is," Jubal said. She said, "All right," and then her legs went and she sat down on the porch boards with the rope still around her, and she did not faint and she did not cry. She simply sat, and she stayed sitting for about 40 seconds while a 14-year-old boy was carried past her into her kitchen. She got up. She got the boy's boots off, and she did the thing with the water that has to be done slowly and that everybody wants to do fast, and she did it slow, and Nate Trumbo kept all 10 of his toes and 8 of his fingers and lost the last joint of the 2 smallest on his left hand in March at Longbow and thought, for the rest of his life, that this was a considerable bargain. Jubal Hark got the rope off her at some point in there, and she did not notice him doing it. Ollie Trumbo came at first light with 2 men. The wind had dropped at 4 in the morning the way it does, all at once and for no reason, and the sun came up on a country that had been rearranged. He stood in that kitchen and looked at his son asleep in a chair by the stove with his hands wrapped. And then he looked at Jubal. And Jubal said, before Ollie Trumbo could get a word out of himself, "It was not me. It was the lantern." Ollie Trumbo looked at him. "I was 200 yards past this house and going away from it," Jubal said. "I had nothing. I had run out of everything I had." He looked at the woman standing at the stove with her right hand wrapped in a cloth. She stood on that porch 4 hours and 19 minutes, and she did not let it out of the same 6 inches of rail, and I came onto it at 81 steps. And if she had gone in to warm herself one time, I would not be standing in this room. The kitchen was quiet. Cordelia Nash said, "The coffee is on," and did not look up from what she was doing. And that was the whole of what she ever said about it in that house or anywhere else for the rest of her life. Ollie Trumbo tried to pay them in March. He came up with $11 and a yearling heifer and stood in the yard with his hat in his hands, and Jubal Hark said no in about the worst way a man can say it, which is quickly, and Cordelia saw the whole thing go wrong in front of her and stepped down off the porch. "Mr. Trumbo," she said, "keep the money." He started to say something. "Keep the money and bring us the heifer in the fall when she is worth something, and you will not miss her," she said, "and come to supper on Sundays, and bring Nate, and let him eat here where he does not have to be the youngest of 4. Ollie Trumbo stood there a moment. Then he said, "All right." They came for 11 years. The pass opened in the 3rd week of April. He said it at the kitchen table on a Tuesday evening, and it was not that kind of evening. It was the ordinary kind, with the supper done and the dishes done and the lamp between them and her mother's Bible at her elbow where it generally was. "The road is open," he said. "Yes, I can take you anywhere you want to go. Longbow or Helena or the railhead at Big Timber and out of the territory altogether. You have got no debt to anybody, and there is not a man in this basin who would say one word about you, and if there was one, he would only say it once." She looked at him. "Is that what you are planning to do?" she said. "Take me somewhere." Jubal Hark looked at the table. "I can take you anywhere," he said. "I do not know how I would come back into this house afterward." She was very still. She looked at him with the brown eyes that had been doing the arithmetic of a woman assessing a situation since the 14th of October, and had, somewhere around the middle of the winter, stopped assessing and started knowing. "Jubal," she said. "Yes, I mended the curtains in your father's room. I know it. And the porch rail. And the breeching. I know, and I have been leaving notes on that table since November." "I know," he said. "Because I live here," she said. He looked at her. She held his eyes with the settled certainty of a woman who has spent a winter arriving somewhere and has arrived. "I live here," she said again, more quietly. It was not a question, and it was not a report about the present. He put his hand across the table over hers. She held it back. "Yes," he said, "you do." And that was all that either of them needed to say about it. They were married at Longbow in the 2nd week of June. Cyrilda came. That was the thing Cordelia had not expected and did not get through as well as she got through most things. The woman had left the Vane place in April of her own accord after 19 years and had gone to keep house for the Reverend at Longbow, and she came into that church in a gray dress and sat 4 rows back and did not speak to anybody, and Cordelia Nash went down the aisle past her and got about 6 feet further on, and then went back and took both of her hands and could not say anything at all. And Cyrilda said, "I know it," and that was all of that. Merrick Vane did not come and was not asked, and did not, as far as anybody ever heard, say one word about it in Longbow or anywhere else. He sold the North sections in '94 and went to Chicago and died there in 1901, and the Longbow paper ran 4 lines on it. And Cordelia read them and put the paper in the stove and did not say anything, and Jubal did not ask her what she was thinking because he had a fair idea. Nate Trumbo worked at the Half Moon 11 years and married a Beaker girl and took over the freight run at Longbow in 1902. He had a way of holding a cup with the 2 short fingers turned under that his own children copied before they were old enough to know why, and he never once let anybody in that country tell the story of February of '92 wrong in front of him. The lantern went in the kitchen window. Cordelia put it there in the summer of '92, on the sill of the west window that looks out over the yard and the gate and the whole run of the basin down to the creek, and she lit it at dark and she filled it in the morning, and she did that every night from that summer until the spring of 1927, which is 35 years. In a house that had wire and a switch on the wall for the last 8 years of it, people asked. She never made anything of it. What she said when she said anything was that a person out on that flat in the dark has got nothing to hold a line by, and that it does not cost much to be a thing somebody can hold a line by, and that she had been raised to think it was worth the oil. She had asked him, on the 14th of October in 1891, sitting between the flour sacks with a bag in her hands and horses coming down the street, to pretend she was his wife until they were out of town. He never pretended one thing. Not once. Not the way he took the wagon out of Longbow, and not the questions he did. Not ask on the mountain road, and not the bolt he put on the inside of a door in the second week of November before he had any business thinking about it, and not the notes on the kitchen table all winter. And not the 4 seconds he stood in his own yard on the 9th of February before he went to the barn. And she had not been pretending either, which is the part that took her until about January to work out about herself. There is a kind of story where a lie gets 2 people out of a town and then has to be kept up, and this was not that kind. Nothing had to be kept up. There was nothing in it to keep. 2 people who did not lie to each other on the first afternoon went on not lying to each other for 35 years. And everything that came after was only the working out of what had already been true in the wagon. She held a small light up above a rail for 4 hours and 19 minutes in a wind that would take a grown man off his feet, and she did it because her mother had walked 4 miles of dark road for 11 years and had taught her one thing, and taught it twice. In the same words both times. If they cannot see you, you are not there. She spent the rest of her life making certain she was there.